Good afternoon, everyone. This is Frank Messina, Chairman of the Chatham Historical Commission. I'd like to welcome you to the June 19th, 2020 meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission, being done by remote participation. A few announcements before we start. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly thereafter for scheduled on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting at this time, please notify the chairman. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A-18, and the governor's March 23, 2020 meeting order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately address the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen into this meeting while in progress may doing so by calling the telephone number 508-945-4410. Conference ID 499-021-683 #. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of the meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Needless to say, because of these current limitations, we will take roll call for all votes and considerations, and would ask citizens and unborn member to participate in the call for their name and last four digits of the phone number for identification purpose. Okay, we'll proceed with a roll call. Vice Chair Bob Lear.
Hold on, Frank. I'm trying to get Mr. Doherty involved, but I'm here.
Okay, he's here. Sandy?
Here.
Ben?
Here.
Stephanie?
Here.
Jane?
Here.
Don?
Here.
Steve Burlingame? Not here. And Erica? Not here. So we have all the members of the commission, and no alternates are present nor necessary for voting. Okay, we have one application and one piece of new business relative to a CPC application, as well as old business, a significant number of discussion items, but we'll try to keep things moving. We've been informed or asked by the town that the selectmen, I guess, are meeting at 5 o'clock. So we're going to make sure we end giving them enough time. As part of that discussion, we are working with the town to see if we can move the meeting time back to our morning time around 9:30. But there are some issues being discussed on that matter. So we'll talk about it in the future. Okay, the next item of business would be the minutes. We have minutes from January 5th, 2020. It was in your packet, so I assume everybody's had time to review the minutes. Are there any comments, corrections, additions, deletions?
Mr. Chairman, it's done.
Yes, sir.
On page 3, paragraph under old business, former Sage Harbor Coast Guard. On the third line, it says, Messina updated the commission that Mr. Doherty will be presenting. I think there's something missing there.
You're saying Chairman Messina gave the commission an update on the next steps in the process. Is that what you're referring to, Don?
No, I'm
Oh, no.
referring to
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, okay.
updated the commission that Mr. Doherty will be presenting. There
Oh, I
was
see.
something
It's the English. Michelle,
We
you
can
got
look at
that?
Rewording. Yeah, we'll look at rewording that. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions?
Right, is Jane,
Yes, Jane?
it's not so much a correction as maybe an addition. On the bottom of page 1, in the last paragraph, Chairman Messina read some correspondence into the records. Wouldn't it be better to say there was a letter of concern from an abutter?
Well, I'm quite candidly, Jane, I'm not sure how we distinguished the correspondence in the past, but I don't think there's a problem. Michelle, can you
usually,
make that?
We can look at rewording that as well. Thank you.
Well, usually, if somebody isn't in favor of it or objects to it, you usually say that.
Okay, very good,
Yes,
Jane.
we'll take a look. Thank you, Jane.
All right, any other comments, questions?
Frank?
Yes?
This is Sandy. It really
Yes,
goes to Shell Bill, I think. Shell, I've always spelled my name with an I instead of a Y. It isn't important, but
Well, it is important. We'll fix it. Thank you.
thanks,
You're
bye-bye.
welcome.
Yes, thank you, Sandy. Okay. Other than that, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as changed?
Bob moves,
I
we
move.
accept the minutes.
Second,
Thank you. I think that was Jane seconding.
was,
Okay, no other comments or question? Roll call? Bob,
Yes,
Sandy?
I just have a quick question. Are we accepting them as read or as corrected?
What do you think? As corrected.
Okay, yes.
Sandy with a Y. Aye. Ben?
yes,
Stephanie?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Okay. We has one application. It's application 21003. And it's to be heard in accordance with chapter 158. The address is 351 Barn Hill Road. And it is filed by Mr. Michael Ford, who is going to be presenting. You have the application, the photos in the application, as well as the form. I think it's a Form B, or is it a Form A? Or an area form, as well as a Form B for the particular property. And hopefully everybody had an opportunity to go visit the site. Having said that, I'll turn it over to the applicant so he can give us an overview of what's being proposed. Or in this case, I believe it's a full demolition.
Frank, it's Bob, and Mike, pardon me for a moment. I happen to be president of the Chatham Conservation Foundation, and Mr. Ford represents us in a number of activities. I don't have any financial interest in this project, obviously, but if somebody thinks I should recuse instead of disclose, that's fine.
I have no objection. I don't know if anybody else does. If not, let's proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Ford here on behalf of the Romines, the applicants. With me is Aaron Polhemus of Polhemus Savory De Silva, Builders and Architects. Mr. Chairman, the Romines have lived at 351 for 13 years now, and their experience in living there really reflects the history of the construction of this building over time. There is kind of an initial core of this building that's difficult to detect, that is probably the oldest portion of it that has a little Cape Cod cellar in it. And as I indicated in my narrative, the rest of the structure exists through a series of additions. It has crawl space with concrete block. It has some poured concrete footings. It has some knee walls, concrete slabs. It's kind of a helter-skelter. And the Remines, having lived there for 13 years, have made a decision that they would like to remove the structure and build a new house on the premises with an eye towards retiring and spending more time there. Hopefully you had an opportunity to go out, because I think a visual observation, you can quickly tell that there's very little by way of historical materials left on this house. If you look at the trim, the windows, the doors, the chimney, none of it appears to be older than 50. In some cases, it's not even that old, some of the work having been done more recently. That said, why are we here? We're here because it appears to us, in examining not only the house, but also the documents that are available to us, that a portion of the structure is over 75 years old. So there's no question that you have jurisdiction, Mr. Chairman, to hear this request for an NOI. That said, we'd like to suggest respectfully to the commission that this is not a historically significant building or structure. And in simply going through your bylaw at 158-2, it's not on the National Estate Register. It's not in any district. So we're down to C. And C, I'd ask that the commission not make a finding that it is historically significant. We didn't find any evidence that any portion of it was related to one or more historical persons or events, or, you know, the history of the town or the Commonwealth in general. And perhaps most importantly, we didn't see where the current building really has any architectural value or significance in terms of style or method of construction or association with an historically prominent architect or building. We do have a number of documents that have been available to us and to the commission. We tried to include them in the application, and to the extent we didn't, I'm sure Michelle got them for you. There are really two Form Bs. One was filled out by your historical consultant, Eric Dray, always does a thorough job. And what we can glean from that is that while there is something to suggest that the core of the building may have been, early 20th century, that the atlases in this area in 1910 show no building on this site, nor a building on the site next door at 353. They were part of one property at one time. Important in his Form B was a reference to a 1922 subdivision plan, though, where the property was divided up. And if perhaps we had a presentation, Mr. Chairman, I could ask that who's ever got it, if Allie's got it, maybe she could start the presentation. That's just the Google Earth. 351 is the building to the right. Now I'm referring to a 1923 subdivision plan. And so we're the lot on the bottom that says Wiles. And what we did with Aaron's assistance, and he can tell you how he did that, we tried to take what was the core of the old building on the 23 subdivision plan and overlay it first on the roof of the existing structure, which kind of building in terms of that one portion that had a Cape Cod cellar. We did the same thing. We overlaid it on the next slide. If we can keep moving up on the slides. Next, please. There. So this is the floor plan, and we try to put the historical section over that as well. The bottom line is that if you go out there, and hopefully you did, you'll see that as was evidenced by the first Form B that was done for the commission or the town by Marie Dyer back in 1980, she indicated that maybe the original building had an origin of 1840, but she put down many additions of 1964. And so we think what's happened here, frankly, is that what there was of an historic structure in the middle of this has really been swallowed up by all the various additions that have occurred. Frankly, if you go out there today, it does not appear, we respectfully suggest, to be an historic structure, have any real historic or architectural significance as a result of all of those additions. We've included, and maybe you could, Ally, just go forward now on the various pictures, and you'll see where all the additions have occurred. If you had a chance to walk around to the, I guess it would be the back of the house, but it actually faces the water. That's the next picture in. Yeah, those are the pictures that that apparently was where the old historic porch was that perhaps was part of the original cape that existed on the site. But it's kind of a building, if you will, that has been swallowed up by the many additions over the years. Most of the structure now is mid-60s or later than that. So I know Aaron also wanted to impart a few comments. He's studied the building and been through it in some detail with Aaron Polhemus with the owners. And Aaron, perhaps if you want to add something here.
Sure. Thank you, Mike. Are you able to hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just for the record, Aaron Polhemus, Polhemus Savery Silva Architects Builders. And thank you for the overview. Mr. Ford, if we could just go back to slide number 1, just quickly, just back to the beginning. That would be great. Excellent. Thank you. So I'll just run through this quickly and point out a couple other details here. As Mr. Ford shared, we did look at we've looked at the structure very closely here. We've studied the structure based on the earlier site plan. So if you go to the second slide here, again, as Mr. Ford shared, this is where you can see back in 1923, where both on 351 and 353 next door, there appear to have been structures that were moved right around we assume around the same time. Then if you move forward to number 3, the next slide, this is where you can see that outline. It does appear that at one point in time, again, there was a historic structure, we believe, moved to the site that does fit roughly into this outline. If you look back, we compared that earlier 1923 site plan to right here, back to, again, number 3. You can see where that older structure would have existed at the time. And then moving forward to 4, this is where just wanted to point out here on the right side, we've shaded in dark red the series of additions that have been added. And actually, we did also have an older contract from, not that old, 1964, which ties to the same date that was referenced in the Form B, I believe, in which the structure was heavily modified. So there was a contract that we actually found from 1964 with an architect and builder who perform substantial renovations and additions to the structure. Which again speaks to that, that heavily modified structure that we see today. So if we just move forward to the next, this is where you can see the newer additions off the front. We call this the front, facing the driveway. And if you come around to the side, we'll just kind of keep rolling around. All of the windows, doors, trim, siding, roof, brick, really everything's been replaced on the structure. So if we keep going around back, we go to the slide 8 and 9. Go to. So this rear section, all of these additions appear to be on a crawl space. There's actually essentially almost no access to the basement. There's a very small section of old cellar underneath what is believed to be the older section of the building, which has been, as Mr. Ford shared, kind of surrounded by additions. Aside from that, everything else is on newer foundation, either block or poured foundation. You can kind of see it in some of these photos, but if we keep coming down to the 13 and 14, here you go. This is where you can see the poured section. So there were poured actually sections of foundation, some other sections that were block, but very clear evidence of poured and block crawl underneath the supermajority, I would say 80% or so, really almost the entire perimeter of the 80 or 90%, almost the entire perimeter of the structure has either this crawl. Here's where you can see some block. There's some block foundation underneath this section here. So, so in our review, it is quite clear from us, from our perspective, as architects and builders, that again, all the materials are relatively new, at least 60s, if not newer. The roof is quite new. The shingles are the roof and shingles are probably within the last 20 years. The windows in some cases last 30, 40 years. Appears anything that wasn't replaced in the 60s has been replaced since, we believe. You can see here, casement windows, sliders, and double hungs. Again, all new. All the associated trim has been replaced. The chimney also, newer brick that corresponds with the stoops that were replaced, we believe, at the same time. We believe that, again, the supermajority of this work was performed back in the 60s after the 1964 renovation addition that went on.
Okay. Anything else, Michael?
Yeah, just to wrap up. So we think that, or we would ask the commission to make a finding that what is left here is not a historically significant structure for the reasons that we've given you. But we're happy to take questions, Mr. Chairman, on any aspect of what we filed or what we presented.
Okay. Sandy, Ben, and Jane, would you put your hands down unless you want to have a question at this particular time?
I have a question, Frank.
Okay, then leave it up and I'll recognize you at the appropriate time. Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Ben, for putting your hand down. I guess a couple of comments from myself. I certainly recognize, what you're saying, but as we indicate from the Form Bs, in that there is, in fact, the original structure, albeit that it was modified before there was an historical commission back in the 60s. And but let's see what the other members have in terms of the feeling. So I guess, the argument, Michael, is that, well, there was an historic house there, but you can't see it. And that's, I guess it's a valid argument. So the question for us is, is what there still historically significant? And that's what we have to think about. But why don't we just at this particular time let the members of the commission ask questions of you, or if they have questions. Jane, you're first.
I had a question. Actually, it had to do with the fact that there seems to be a lot
I'm
of.
sorry, Jane. Hold on 1 second.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Somebody turn your phone off, please.
Yeah.
All right, let's start again, Jane.
Okay, I can't see anybody, but can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
Michael and Aaron, would you turn your camera off?
I just had a question about the construction that appeared to be taking place already there. Is that the wall of a new house that you're building there? Or is that going to replace what you just showed us, or what is it?
So, Mr. Chairman, this is Mike Ford.
Yes, Michael.
There is construction ongoing at 353, Jane.
Okay.
That's a separate house. That also had a companion 4B. That was the one that was shown on the plan as well. But that has nothing to do with this petition. That's a separate, in separate ownership.
I would say that the whole thing is very confusing, but you did a good job of explaining. It certainly has had a lot of additions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to do a roll call. Bob, questions?
I've got, I guess, a couple of comments and some questions for Mike, or maybe Aaron. Just to point out that in the Form B, it does note that the full cape is still discernible and the north slope of the full cape is also discernible. So it's not hidden, and upon visual inspection, that appears to be accurate. Mike, the permits that you submitted, one is to build the garage, correct?
That's correct. I didn't rely on that. I just wanted to tell you that a garage was built.
Well, okay. And one was to do the re-roofing, which you mentioned.
Right. And then there was the permit that from the 60s, which was the additions.
1965, it doesn't really tell us what was going on, but it was $15,000, which is not, even then, not that big a deal. But so
yeah.
I'm not buying the whole pitch about it, how it was completely redone based on what you've submitted. And it does, I mean, the argument that they just don't like the house anymore, so they want to tear it down, that doesn't really cut it for me. I think other things could be done to the house. If they have some specific problems they want to solve, then let's look at the problems. So we don't like it, let's tear it down is not what we do.
Well, if I may, Frank, can I respond to that?
Yes, please.
So I hear what you're saying, but I think there's a threshold question. And that is, it's not a question of whether they don't like the house, tear it down because they don't like it. The question before you as a commissioner is what's there historically significant as that term is defined in the bylaw? Not simply because somebody refers to it in a Form B, but upon a visual inspection and upon going out and looking at what's actually there, can you as a commission member make a good faith finding that what is there is a historically significant structure? That's the question. And if indeed it's not, the fact that you want to inquire as to what their problems are or whether they want to take their house down or don't take it down, that's for them to decide. Your decision is,
well,
is it significant?
I would be glad to respond to that. You did fail to note that the Form B also notes a historically important person, the editor of, I think it's House and Garden magazine, who was there with his gardens. And I think it possesses architectural value or significance in terms of the period and style. And that's entirely subjective, I agree, but I think those are legitimate bases. Historically significant.
Well, I guess I'd ask.
All right, one at a
Stop.
time, gentlemen. One at a time. Yes, Michael, go ahead.
I said I was simply going to ask him what the period and style is in looking at that house, but as he said, that's kind of subjective. I would agree it is subjective.
Okay. Any other member of the commission? Aaron, do you want to respond for Michael? What, you have your hand up, Aaron?
There.
Well, I was just going to share, I mean, there is a, a rather involved.
Could you speak up a little, Aaron?
Yes, the contract from 1964 is it's a full contract for alterations, additions to the house. I'm not sure what Mr. Lear was responding to or referring to, but from that contract and with the work that was clearly done around that era, it is very clear from our perspective that the supermajority of that structure was surrounded in after 1964.
All right, let's focus, members of the commission. The issue here is the structure as it currently exists, as it's annotated within the Form Bs. Is it historically significant? Do we feel it's historically significant based upon the criteria? Whether or not we do anything, with that historical significance in terms of demolition delay is part two. So let's focus on part one. Do we feel what is there now, again, from your site visit, as Michael indicated, and our current description as put in the Form B? I would also indicate, from my perspective, Michael, like you said, the Cape Cod cellar is still there, and it certainly potentially is 17 or 1800 original house there. Now, the question is, do we still consider what's there or to be historically significant? Let's proceed. Stephanie?
I do think that it is historically significant. I think that the house is basically still there, even if it's enclosed. I also feel that it had a significant owner.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go down. Anybody have any questions, or else I'm going to get a sense of the commission. Jane, do you have another question?
No, I didn't, but I sort of agree with Bob.
I'm sorry?
I sort of agree with Bob.
You agree with Bob is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, put your hand down. All right. Okay, at this particular point, let's talk amongst ourselves as it relates to the issue, or the first issue is historical significance. So I'm trying to gain a consensus here. Bob, I gather you feel there is historical significance in what is remaining.
I do, yes.
And Jane, you also seem to concur?
I do.
Okay. Sandy?
Absolutely, I agree with Bob and Jane.
All right. Ben?
I don't have enough personal information to make a rational decision on this. It's too convoluted to me. And my site visit was from the outside and external, and
can you speak up a bit, Ben?
I'm kind of yelling here, Frank.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little bit better.
All right, I'll try to speak near the microphone. This is convoluted to me. And from my inspection, I was out there, I don't feel that I have enough information to make a rational decision. So that I'm just really going to have to abstain. Then that's where I stand, okay?
All right. That's fair enough. Stephanie?
I definitely think it's historic for the reasons I gave. And I also think that there was someone that owned it that was pretty famous.
Okay. Donald?
having not been able to go inside this house like we used to be able to do and look at what is left of the interior that was historic, it's difficult, but I believe that the original cape is still there, but has been surrounded and smothered by all the additions. My question is, can it be the original cape be preserved and incorporated into any new design?
All right, well, let's save that for part two. Okay, I think we've heard from everybody. Well, I guess myself. I keep forgetting that I'm part of this. You know, it's not a slam dunk in terms of it, but I still feel that, you know, in terms of our role as a commission, you know, the discernible portion of the original house, given its history and the fact that it is still there based upon the 17th or 1800 times when the house era that the house was built, I would have to say the structure is in fact historically significant. What we do about it's another issue. So having said that, I think we have a consensus in where we're going. So I would entertain a motion relative to historical significance. Robert?
Yes, I'm sorry, my mouse was being annoying. I move the Historical Commission finds that the building located at 351 Barnhill Road is historically significant because it is in whole or in part 75 years old or more, and is associated with one or more historical persons of the town of Chatham and possesses architectural value or significance in terms of period and style.
This is Sandy. I'll second.
Okay, we got a second there. I think, was it Jane?
It was Sandy.
Steph and Sandy.
Steph? Okay, Steph. Thank you. All right. Any member of the public wish to speak for or against that? Okay, we'll do a roll call. Bob?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, before you vote.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, before you vote,
Michael,
Mike
is that
Ford.
you?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, Mike. I apologize.
I was simply, I asked to address you before you took the vote, simply because you made a comment that the building, that it's unrefuted, given the Form Bs, that the building is 1800s. Your own Form B shows that in 1910, there was nothing on the lot. That's Eric Dre's Form B.
Well, Michael, I agree with you. If I misspoke in what I was saying, I guess I'm trying to say that there is a lot of uncertainty when the original house was put in there or not.
Okay.
I should have expanded by saying, but there's definitely at least 75 years of age. And then I guess I was referring to the fact that you indicated there is a Cape Cod cellar, which may have made it even dated even earlier. And as Donald said, unfortunately, we don't get to go in the buildings anymore to help us. So I'd rather err on the side of historical significance. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you correcting me. Okay, Mr. Lear, that was a yes. We're
Yes.
voting on the motion that determined it is historically significant.
That
Bob,
is yes.
thank you. Sandy,
Yes.
Ben,
Abstain.
thank you. Sandy,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
Frank?
Okay,
Frank, you didn't catch that. I vote yes also.
Steph, I thought I heard you. I'm sorry.
You called Sandy twice.
Oh, okay. Not a good day for me today, guys. Okay. I got to get microphone better. All right. So at this particular point, having said that the commission concurs it is historically significant, you know, we've got a part two action here of whether or not any particular demolition delay is warranted, or if we do anything, you know, what length of time. It's obvious not obvious. We don't have anything from the applicant relative to what is potentially going to replace this house. So we don't have the opportunity to help have any influence relative to what is replaced and to try and save what of the structure is historically significant. And it's a full demolition. And so at this particular point, I guess I'm looking for some comments on how we should proceed. Obviously, the applicant is looking to get it down so they can put something up. And what's our chances to save any of this historical structure? You know, Michael or Mr. Polimis, do you have any comment?
Well, this is Michael. I'm sure that Mr. Polhemus and I could engage the owners with respect to the thoughts of the commission. I respect your finding of historical significance. This is not a house, Mr. Chairman, I suggest that could be readily moved. It's just got all these additions that, and as Aaron pointed out,
Yes.
that are on slabs, on knee walls, cellar. So, I mean, I think I'd ask the commission to consider something in the vicinity, if you're going to consider a delay, of say 6 months, and because I don't think that this house can get moved. The owners could certainly be apprised of what your thoughts are today in terms of the design that comes forward.
Okay.
But I can't suggest that I have any, you know, have any authority to tell you that they're committed to a design to save the core of the house, because they weren't when we filed. So, but obviously we'd advise them of what your finding is. But
Well,
if you're going to impose a delay, I'd suggest that would make more sense, because other than that, it would simply be punitive, because this is not a house that's going to get moved.
Yeah, I would personally agree with you. And the question is if, in fact, there could be some influence relative to our decision to attempt to save some of the core house or not. I noticed the house next door, which is going to be a large addition, but the original house is still there. But anyway, so having said
Actually, if I
Yes.
may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Aaron?
Yes, just to correct you on that, the house next door, actually, the only piece that remained was actually a newer addition, which was seaward of the what was older house. Just to be clear, the whole house next door was actually demolished. Just to share, just wanted to share that with you. And then back to 351. I think Mr. Ford's recommendations are good. I would share that, you know, our clients here have suggested that, you know, their goal is to design, you know, have a home design on the site that is very much in keeping with the neighborhood, not a sprawling home, not a significant home, but something that's efficient, that's well built, that can last generations. I mean, that's really what this is about. This home is, you know, it's a home that was, again, largely redone in the 60s, and it would need a substantial amount of work to keep up over the years. So the goal is to they've been here for 15 years, but to build something that is very, you know, fits into the neighborhood, and keeping with the neighborhood, that can remain here for generations. That's the goal. They've been here for a long time.
Well, thank you. I understand that, but I think, you know, that you're saying, and Mr. Ford, if we could somehow save the core or some elements of it, that's what we're going to try and do, at least encourage you to do that if it's possible. I'm speaking for myself only here. So, and I agree with you relative to the other house, but it wasn't 75 years, and that's why it never came to the commission. But whether it was 75 years or 50 years, looks like they did save the older part of the house. So we'll see. But I don't want to, you know, bring them into the discussion from that perspective, other than to provide it as a way you could potentially still get a modern house there, addition, and still save the core of the historic house. Okay, I'd like to open it up to the other members of the commission. If you have any comments as it relates to a demolition delay, and if there's
My
any
hand is up, Frank.
suggestion.
My
Yes,
hand
Steph,
is up.
I got you. Just hold on. So we've got a couple of people who want to speak. Jane, you had your hand up first.
I'm trying to put my hand down.
Yeah, I have it, Jane.
I want my hand down. I agree with Bob. I have nothing more to say, except that I hope they can incorporate the old structure.
I'm not sure I understood that, Jane.
I hope they will be able to incorporate the old structure.
Michelle, can you interpret that for me?
Uh,
I'm having
Jane said
problems
she-
hearing Jane.
I'm sorry, yes, the volume is very low, but I heard that she hopes that they can incorporate the old structure in the new design.
Thank you very much. All
Okay.
right, Stephanie?
Yeah, I like very much to hear that they don't want a sprawling house or a significantly bigger house. But with what has happened in Chatham with our McMansions, I would like to know more about what's going on the property.
All right, well, at this particular point, the issue is whether or not we want to impose a demolition delay, and the applicant has proposed 6 months that would allow them to go back to excuse me, Mr. Ford has proposed 6 months, which will allow them to go back to the applicant and potentially maybe come back to us with some thoughts or comments in which we could raise if in fact we put a demolition delay in. I, for one, think that's a reasonable approach at this particular time. Anybody else want to opine on the issue of 6 months?
Frank, it's Don.
Yes, sir.
I'm reminded of the house on Bridge Street that faces Stage Harbor that was historic and a large addition was put on it and preserved the historic house. I'm also reminded of a house up by Eastward Ho that there's 2 rooms that were left in that are now inside the building, and that was preserved. I personally don't think 6 months is enough time. I think a year, and we can always, if the applicant comes back with plans to include the historic portion, we can always lift the demolition delay, but we can't extend it. So I would suggest either a year or the full 18 months.
All right, well, without belaboring this discussion, do you want to make a motion to that effect, Don?
Yes, I move that the Chatham Historical Commission impose a demolition delay of 1 year on the property at 351 Barn Hill Road, with the understanding that if the applicants want to come back with a plan to include the historic portion of the house, that we will be willing to reconsider.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second, Jane.
We have a second. I
Jane.
guess that was Jane. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other discussion from the commission or members of the public? Okay, we have a motion for 12-month demolition delay. I'm going to take a roll call, and if everybody's comfortable with that motion, so to speak. Mr. Lear,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes,
Ben,
Abstain.
Stephanie,
Yes,
Jane,
Yes.
Don.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair will go along with the full commission. Okay, so we have a 12-month demolition delay, and as you're well familiar, Aaron, just come back to us as soon as you can, and we could work on lifting the delay if in fact it's plausible and acceptable to the commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if it's my ears or everybody's, but boy, it's hard to hear. So
Frank, it's John.
Sorry?
Did you lift your computer up so that, but you said your speakers were on the bottom? Have you lifted the computer up so you can hear better?
Yeah, do you see the ceiling? I have lifted it.
Well,
So-
put it up on a couple of books.
Oh, it's on a couple of books, and I just tilted it. So the speakers are on the bottom. So we'll have to bear with you, and Michelle will act as the interpreter. For some reason, I hear her loud and clear. Okay, next item on the agenda is under new business. We have a Community Preservation Committee application for the proposed historical preservation of the Chatham U.S. Coast Guard Boathouse. Mr. Doherty, Dave Doherty is here, who's the President Director of the Chatham U.S. Coast Guard Preservation Group. Certainly know what's going on. This commission has been active in attempting to define, to document the Coast Guard Boathouse. And it looks like it's been saved up to a point. Mr. Doherty, you want to give us a brief overview of what you're proposing?
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, very good.
Okay. As you probably all know, the boathouse was recently moved from Hull, Massachusetts to the Quincy shipyard by J. Cashman and Sterling Equipment Company. And it's sitting in the boatyard shipyard right now. We're looking to bring it down to Chatham and hopefully repurpose it as an upwelling facility on at Bridge Street, 90 Bridge Street on Stage Harbor. As you probably all remember, it was moved from Chatham in 2009. It was going to be repurposed in Quincy as a facility for the North Quincy and Quincy high schools, but that deal fell apart. And so we've got a second bite at the apple, and I'm certainly hopeful that we can bring it back to the shores of Stage Harbor, where it certainly belongs in view of its rich maritime history. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I guess at this particular point, a couple of comments. This commission has recently submitted the Form B, which didn't exist up until now, relative to the 1936 structure, which we had even back in 2009 indicated that it was historically significant, which technically would meet the minimum requirements from an historical commission point of view, in indicating back to the commission and our representative, Stephanie, that the structure in question is in fact historically significant. I guess the other question, Steph, is that is there anything to go on or any precedent as it relates to utilizing funds to move a building? And it's interesting, you know, we did it back, goodness gracious, I think it was at least 10 years ago when we moved the Caleb Nickerson house from one side of Chatham to the other on a boat. So, okay, why don't we open it up for members of the commission? Any comments? And the question is, do we feel what the applicant is proposing, that what he's proposing to work on is historically significant, and whether or not we feel this is a reasonable use of historic preservation funds? Mr. Lear?
Yes, I agree. I think we've already, by submitting an application to Mass Historic, stated that it's historically significant. And I think it's, having previously been on the Community Preservation Committee, I believe it's an appropriate topic.
Very good. Sandy?
I absolutely agree. I do have one question for David. Am I correct? You're looking for $440,000 in the CPC grant application, David?
No, that is not correct, Sandy.
I'm sorry, how much?
We're looking for funds between $200,000 and $225,000 to pay all expenses relative to any storage fees and to deliver it by barge and place it on a site in Chatham.
Okay, so the 440,000 I'm thinking of, is that to get it operational as the upweller?
The 440,000 is the estimate provided by the town engineers to repurpose the Coast Guard boathouse. The cost, that was 440,000.
Right.
The estimate cost to build new an upwelling facility was $400,000. So the difference, of course, is $40,000 for historic preservation.
And can we get it moved? Do you really feel we can get it moved for the 220,000 or whatever?
Oh, I am completely confident that we could get it down here for
Okay.
$225,000, which would include any storage fees.
I think it's a great application and it would be a great use of CPC funds. I'm supported 100%.
Ben?
Yeah, what condition is this boathouse in now?
It's in need of some repairs, shingles on the outside, on the roof, dormer repair, various items. But let me tell you, the building is 30 feet by 60 feet, built in 1936 when a 2x4 was 2x4 or 12x12, and it'll outlast any building, probably my house, that was built in 1988, in my opinion.
Ben, if you want further information, and also Sandy, excuse me, not Sandy, but Stephanie, when you consider it at the CPC, the town spent almost a month with engineers going over the building to do a due diligence, and there's an extensive engineering report, goes into a lot of detail. And, you know, they did not say that the building was garbage. They felt it was in pretty much a fair condition considering its age. So there is that that issue. If you want some additional information, Ben. Stephanie?
Well, these things all boil down to money. And I was just wondering if, you know, if it's in reasonably decent shape, and it seems to be something that can be accomplished, that we'll go ahead. But if it's another pipe dream, and this thing has been on a couple pipe dreams already, then you ought to back off. You know what I mean? I mean, is there any other quotes, Coast Guard boathouses around? Is this, what makes this one so special besides that it was in Chatham and Chatham didn't want it?
Well, Ben, if I could answer that, and I'm sure Mr. Doherty will speak in. There are two other Coast Guard boathouses which are built about the same time. One in Cuttyhunk, which is being used as an upweller, just as we would like to do it, or they would like to do it. And the second Coast Guard boathouse, almost exactly the same, is in Nantucket and has been there around the same time and used for storage. So I think what makes it so special, from my point of view, is that this building was involved in the storage and the maintenance of the Coast Guard rescue boat that was involved in the Pendleton, as well as being a significant part of Chatham's maritime history. I don't know, Dave, you want to add to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd also like to point out it was the Brant Point Coast Guard boathouse that received $550,000 of community preservation funds to repurpose it as an upwelling facility for the town of Nantucket, or for the island of Nantucket. So,
Oh,
All right, so that was in Nantucket. Those people are richer than we are, aren't they?
Ben?
No comment.
All right, Ben, did you get
Okay,
your answers to your question, Ben?
Yes, I did. And I have one thing for you. When you said you're not having a good day, just remember that every day above ground is a good day, Frank.
That's the old expression. I don't mind getting old when I consider the alternative. Okay, Stephanie,
I'm very much for it. I just have one concern is I listened to the selectmen's meeting last week, and it didn't sound like they were too in favor of using it for an upwelling.
Well, you know, there's an expression in politics. Sometimes we need to cloud people's perspective. So let's hopefully with this here activity and other people in the community speaking out, the selectmen will see that, you know, maybe a couple $100,000 extra is worth the investment to save this historic structure.
I have
Jane?
one more question, Steph.
Yes, yes, Steph.
My one more question is, do we have other ideas of where it may be placed?
David?
Failing located at 90 Bridge Street, a possible fallback plan would be to replace the harbor master's existing tin building where he keeps his gear and the workshop and put it there on Stage Harbor Road. And failing that, there has been discussions about possibly relocating it to Harding's Beach as a new bathhouse facility.
Thank you.
Jane?
I'm in everything that Bob said and your presentation, both of your presentations before the DOS, I thought excellent. I think good expenditure for the CPC. So I'm in favor of it. They are two things go.
Jane, you're breaking up, but Michelle, could you interpret that?
I think the bottom line is that she's in favor.
Thank you.
You're
Don?
welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Aikman?
Yeah, what is this?
Did we lose Don? Mark, is it us or is it the internet?
Frank, echoing.
I'm thinking it might be the internet.
Yeah, it's really terrible. Don?
I think Mr. Aikman is muted.
Don, I think we're muted, Don. He's still there? Oh, yeah, he's still there. Or did we just lose him? Those dotted lines means he disconnected. Michelle, if you could try to get Don.
Yep, I'll give him a call right now.
And the chair agrees wholeheartedly that to support this application. I guess the protocol here will let Don come back. Donald, are you back? Nope. All right, we're going to assume that the 5 of us voting yes is sufficient. So we need a motion. Did I already
Frank?
have a motion? Yeah.
Excuse me, Frank, it's Michelle. Don's number is busy, so I don't know if there's a problem at his house or what.
Okay, we took a consensus. Now we need a motion.
Frank, I'm here, but.
Don, you agree to support the application?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, we're going to do this quickly. A motion, please.
Frank, I'll do that. I move the Chatham Historical Commission through its chair send a letter to the Community Preservation Committee that we support the application for moving the boathouse from its current location down to Chatham.
Thank you very much.
Steph,
Sandy, I'll second it.
Steph, second. Thank you. All right, roll call. Bob?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Stephanie?
yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Don?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes. Mr. Doherty, thank you very much. I'll write a letter and then you'll get it shortly.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your efforts to try to save this historic structure. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a couple of things that we have to do. first item on the old business is the process for the administrative review. There was a question at the last meeting relative to the process. And let me just reiterate for the members of the public and the commission. We voted to accept this, the beginning of this administrative review process in which the issue of age of the structure and whether or not alteration are minor or consists of repair, and to allow the chair and the vice chair to make an independent assessment, and if so, then to proceed with that decision back to the staff of community development. And then at the next meeting, there will be an analysis, not analysis, there will be a list of those decisions that were made by the chair and the vice chair. We're going to give this a try. We'll see how it works. And if it doesn't, we'll proceed for something else. If it does work, it's the precursor for us to creep up on the issue of historical significance and administrative assistance in helping us. So if there's no other comments or anybody have any questions? Thank you. Ally, you're on.
Great, thank you, Frank. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen just so everyone can see it. Just take me 1 second. So basically the last time, and I'm not sure if Frank filled you in on kind of where we were at the last commission meeting, but we did meet with the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals and also the chair of the Planning Board, just to give their to get their input and feedback on the draft dimensional historic preservation incentive bylaw. Through that, the chair of the ZBA kind of wanted to have more of a one-on-one conversation with the building commissioner and also the head of community development, just because he was a little bit concerned, and I'm going down to this section right now, regarding the waivers for dimensional standards. And we anticipated that, you know, that would be something that we would need to address because we did just kind of, to the best of our ability, put, you know, some numbers for building coverage and building setbacks that we thought would be, you know, adequate or at least acceptable, but we did anticipate that there would be some pushback on that. So it was good that we had that meeting so we could kind of get some more thoughts to that. So I'll just kind of go through very quickly, you know, what we've changed so far so we can get some feedback from the commission. I know you did not get this in your packet. I'm sorry, it's the last minute. So if you need more time to think about it, you can, you know, that's totally fine with me too. So I'll first start with the building coverage. Before we're hoping that we could waive 10% additional building coverage than the minimum building coverage allowed in the zoning district. So we're proposing to give additional building coverage if you keep your historic structure. There were some concerns around that 10% number. It was the concern that that was too large. So something that was thrown out there, and this is what I have here, is that we really thought maybe we should tie that number to the historic structure. So basically we're saying that whatever the historic structure's footprint was, and we needed to define that, so we said 75 years or older, you could have an additional, so you could have 50% of that historic structure's footprint. So I'm just going to give a number, which, you know, say it's 100 square feet is your existing historic structure, which is obviously very unlikely. No one lives in a 100 square foot house, but this is just round numbers so that you get the idea. So say the historic structure footprint is 100 square feet. You would allow to have 50% of that, or 50 square feet additional building coverage to your house. And we thought that that could be a good way to kind of go about being fair instead of giving a blanket percentage number. So we made that change. I understand that the wording, Frank was telling me that the wording was a little bit confusing, which I totally get. I'll probably have to drill down more and kind of revise, but I just wanted to bring it to the commission to see, what your thoughts were on that before we go forward. And then for the building setback, everyone was pretty much okay with that, which was 1/2 the minimum required setback in the zoning district. They were just a little concerned with the wording. So I just made that change to hopefully make it more clear. But that's really the bulk of what has changed so far. We are hoping to send the wording out to the Zoning Board of Appeals members so that they can give us more comments kind of in the totality of their board. And also we were hoping to do the same with the planning board so we can kind of keep this rolling forward. With that, Frank, I'll give it back to you if you have any questions or if the commission wants to talk more about this.
Okay, thank you very much, Ally. Well, the key thing here, folks, is the fact that we did have a very good meeting with Ally and Katie Donovan, Mr. Nixon, and Kathleen. I forget her last name.
Catherine.
Right, of the planning board, and we went into we spent a lot of time on it, and I think there was buy-in of the concept and more or less buy-in of what we're trying to accomplish. But again, this business that we just talk about, the percentages, and that's going to require a lot more discussion. But I think that discussion, in my opinion, is more germane to the experts, quotes, which is specifically the members of the ZBA and the planning board and staff. So at this particular point, I'm going to bow out and let them have that discussion. As long as we get buy-in on accomplish of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish it, and how they dot the I across the T relative to the actual percentages. This is a dialogue which is going to happen, and I appreciate Ally's efforts. And the only comment I would make with Ally is we're hoping that we could keep the pressure on. Not that Ally needs any pressure, but the zoning board and the planning board to address this subject pretty quickly, so we can get this revised draft to town council and potentially have a chance of making town meeting. I don't know if there's going to be a spring town meeting and when it's going to be, but I would like to be in a situation of accomplishing it this year. We were successful last year in getting a change to 158, and we've got a lot on our plate, and I'd like to push forward. Having said that, does anybody have any specific comments or question relative to Ally's changes or the process?
Frank, it's Bob.
Yes, sir.
I have, I guess, two questions for Al. Well, a comment or a question. At that meeting, David Nixon expressed some concern about our definition of an eligible historic building, which says that it's located within a historic district, and wondering whether any building within a historic district, which is a geographical area, would thus qualify, even though it's not really in and of itself a historic building.
That's a good point.
And I think that we can address that by saying that it is a contributing structure within any historic district.
Ah, very good. Ally, did you get that?
Yep.
And secondly, Ally, I don't think I quite followed the whole discussion because I don't know enough about zoning, but there was a good deal of going on about whether the two sections you mentioned about coverage and setback applied to non-conforming or non-conforming buildings. Did that get addressed?
Yeah, so we did have a long discussion about that as well. And we thought it would be best to make it for both conforming and non-conforming lots. Okay. Just because when so my original thought, and this has to do with the conversations that we're having previous, was that if it was a non-conforming structure, we already have an avenue through special permit to get relief to basically expand. And so why would anyone want to put a preservation restriction on your house to expand when you already have this existing avenue? But it was pointed out to me that there are many ways that a structure, a lot, can be non-conforming, and just because it might be conforming in one way doesn't mean that it's can be non-conforming, or just because it's non-conforming in one way doesn't mean that it's conforming in another. And so, after lots of discussion, we thought that it would be best to go forward with both.
I rely on your judgment. I didn't understand it, so it's fine.
Okay.
All right, anybody else?
Yes, I have,
Yes, Ben?
most of the area in the portion of Chatham, these houses are on small, what I would consider postage stamp type lots. I think that if you're going to make a way to pressure people to save really, truly historic buildings, that you can't nickel dime them as far as footprints and all this other stuff. I think that somehow it has to be individually looked at if you're going to save a structure. Because, when you start saying 50%, 30%, I go down by the lighthouse there, and some of these are 75% covered on the land part. So this makes it something that's set apart from the, I believe, the mega mansion scene. So I just want to make sure when we do that, the zoning board or whoever just not making rules to make rules to show they're still boss and we're not. Because most of these places, as I say, especially these smaller historic structures, are on really smaller historic non-conforming lots. So that's just my feel.
Understand, Ben. Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, going to move along quickly.
Sorry, Frank, this is Allie. I just want to ask a quick question of the commission, just based upon that language change that we made for the building coverage. So right now we're leaving it up to the commission to determine how large the structure, is that is 75 years or older. Do you think that that's a rational thing for the commission to be able to determine as you go through? So it would be the commission making the determination about how big the existing historic structure's footprint is. Is that something that, you feel like that's doable or no?
Well, it's a very good point. And it's something I think we're going to have to talk about. And now that I see your wording, we'll think about it, because, I'll use an example, the one we just heard. Now, there is a very historic building, which is surrounded by a lot of new additions. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the commission's general policy is that, it's historically significant. We consider both the original older than 75 and the newer parts of it. So it may present the wrinkle. I got to think about that. Whether or not we are really easily and consistently able to do that by defining, the so-called historic structure. We may have to put some additional qualifications in that. So it needs a lot more wording if we're going to use that concept.
Okay. Yeah, I just worry that could be a hiccup as we go forward with the bylaw, that it might be hard to identify where or how large this, historic structure's footprint is.
Yeah, let me think about that. Okay?
Okay. Frank, I just want to make another comment in light of what you just said. It's just a matter of control here, and I think that this has to be mollified by the fact that you need control, but you need to be reasonable and flexible. And I don't know how you get all that in one sentence, okay?
Yeah, so I agree. And Allie, this may end up being introducing too many other variables.
Okay, yeah, that's why I wanted the sense of the commission to
Yeah.
see if this was something that was doable. If not, we'll have to kind of reevaluate. We got some other ideas during the meeting, but this was the one that was landed upon. So if the commission feels like it's not doable in your eyes, then we'll have to work out something else.
Yeah, I think, we decided not to do the host lots because it was too complex. This is a difficult one to explain.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's got to be, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah,
okay,
too
All right.
too complicated.
okay,
All right.
so yeah,
I'm
let
gonna
me,
move along, folks.
okay,
I know
thank you,
that
Frank.
we need to get out and offline here in a bit. So unless there's major objection, I think we killed the Coast Guard boathouse. There's not much to say other than the fact that Mr. Doherty goes before the CPC with Stephanie as our representative on I think the 25th, and then Steph, that's your next meeting, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And I think this Board of Selectmen meet on the 26th. So then, we'll know what's going to happen. The next item, preservation awards. Our deadline is January 28th, and we are in the process of receiving a new application for 154 Champlain. Michelle, is that correct?
Yes, Frank, we are expecting that one, and I've had a couple of other calls as well. So I have not received anything physical yet, but I do know there are a few in the pipeline.
Okay. Now, the Community Preservation Committee, which unfortunately was myself and Erica, who's currently MIA, and we have a meeting on January 29th. I would like to ask another member of the commission to join me on the 29th. I won't put you on the spot right now, but if somebody else could join me, so we have two members of the commission at the meeting, I'll send out an email with some specifics, but I believe it's a Zoom meeting on January 29th at 9:30. So I need some help here, guys, because the objective is to have a meeting, to make a decision, and then schedule some kind of a Zoom awards presentation sometime in May. So the first step is just to agree that we have applications which are worthy of an award. The reason I'm pushing it is we've got two awards from the previous year, and I don't want to make these folks wait like 3 years before they get their plaque. Any objections? No. So again, I'm looking for a volunteer to help me out. It's a very simple job. You say yay or nay. All right.
Frank?
Yes, Sam.
Sandy, I've done it with you before. I'll do it.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Okay, I'll send you
keep-
information.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Sandy. The next item, the application, we had a very good meeting with myself, Mr. Lear, you're a vice chairman of vice, and Ally and Michelle and Katie Donovan. We went over a lot of elements as it relates to the application process and submission requirements, as well as adherence to historical commission determination. The action items from the meeting were basically Michelle, who's going to come back with some proposed changes to our application. Basically, to be more specific, I think you're all aware, sometimes we get applications which are great, other ones you can't read or understand anything. So we've got to be a lot more specific in our application, and also so Michelle doesn't have to be constantly battling with applicants relative to what is or is not required. Specifically drawing size and just how they are submitted. Ms. Donovan agreed with our process for potentially moving towards some kind of administrative review. And I think let's see how this current change goes, and then we'll pick it up from there. The issue of compliance and adherence to deadlines, we need to talk more about that as a commission. I don't want to do it now. For instance, I know from other commissions, what they do is when they have a really significant application, and I'll use like Water Street, where we just had some issues, they actually assign a member of the commission to be kind of a watchdog. Not that you're going to go out with a badge and enforce things, but to do drive-bys to ensure. So let's talk more about whether or not we want to install that kind of a process. Very simply, if I could move on, if you allow me, you do have a copy of the current demolition delays. Michelle, is there anything you want to add to this?
I don't think so, Frank. Thank you, though.
All right. We're waiting for 26 Cockle Cove to be demolished, which I'm sure is going to happen sometime in the near future. Seaview Street, nothing has happened. 68 Shell Drive, they had their initial meeting with Conscom, and quite honestly, I thought it went quite well. So hopefully we're going to be able to save that house and move it. When I say it quite well, it looked like there seemed to be an acknowledgement that the land, although is in the flood zone, is a bowl and would not impact any adjoining properties. But I don't want to go there other than to say the next Conservation Mission meeting is on February 10th. And there is a ZBA meeting to discuss Mr. Chickleone's application and moving the historic house on January 28th. Monomoy Theater property, stay tuned. They met with the HBDC, and I guess we're going to hear something soon. South Chatham Village Hall, last time I indicated to you that I spoke with Mass Historic and got an email from them that they assure me that they are proceeding with the review. Although during the COVID crisis, it's just very difficult for them to have any site visits or anything like that. So, I'm hopeful that will happen. Last but not least, I sent out our annual report to the town. You did get a copy of it. If there are any major objections, send me an email. Last but not least,
Frank,
yes, ma'am.
this is Sandy. I thought it was a very well-written report. It was very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pay you that $5 that I said if you make that comment. Thank you very much. No, guys, when you stop and think about what we're doing, we're doing a lot, and I appreciate the help. Last but not least, I sent everybody a copy of the comprehensive plan, the section 5 on historic preservation and community character. Steph, I don't know I assume you got a copy, but when we talk about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to preserve, and they always ask the question with CPC application, is this application in conformance with the comprehensive plan? So I think we're doing a pretty good job on that area.
Frank, just to mention to you about CPC, this is Steph speaking. We are having things introduced to us, but we're not discussing them yet.
Yes,
So
understand.
Okay.
Okay. Somehow my picture got large. My goodness. What's happened to my hair? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, any member of the public wish to speak? I see we have Ms. Briggs and Mr. DeCastro. Any other comments? Hearing none?
Frank?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Jane. When are you giving your report to BOS?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Steph.
It's Jane.
Sandy?
When are you giving your report to the BOS?
Oh, That's a good question, especially since Mr. DeCastro is on the call. I haven't given a report to the Board of Selectmen, currently called the Select Board, in 2 years. We were rescheduled and never did it in 2020 or 19, and then 20, COVID happened. So I don't know. Maybe Mr. Nacasio can comment. Is that something that the Select Board now is doing away with?
Chairman Messina, it's Dean.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Yeah, we haven't had any committee reports in a long, long time since the COVID
Yes.
crisis began. We certainly have not adopted a change in our policy. I expect at some point those reports will resume. Certainly, you could, if you wanted, I'm sure you could submit a written report if you'd like, and it would be shared with the board. But yeah, there's nothing new in terms of our process. It's just other than a lot of things have been deferred because of COVID.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Mark, are you here?
Yes, I am.
It really was very difficult. Everybody's breaking up and it's hard to hear.
I'm also experiencing some of that.
Well, we're going to have to do something because it's really difficult and unfair to the members of the commission or to the applicants. So having said that, one last motion, unless somebody wants to say something.
Frank, it's Don. I move that we adjourn.
I second. Jane?
Second, Jane, I think that was you. Roll call, Mr. Lear,
Yes.
Mr. Sandy with an I,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you very much, guys. I really do appreciate your putting up with me.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, take care. Be safe.